The star was never on any chart. It never showed in the sensors. But we'd seen it, every one of us, in dreams. It had been 50 years since the solar collapse. 50 years since the sun turned cannibal, devouring its own light and throwing Earth into screaming radio silence. What fragments of humanity survived clung to fractured alliances, rogue outposts, and corporate coalitions built on necessity rather than hope. Among them rose the early incarnation of the Space Explorers Syndicate, a scattered network of deep space pioneers, scavengers, and thinkers too stubborn to die in the dark. Our ship, the Driftglass, was among the earliest of the Syndicate's long-range prospectors. We charted unclaimed systems, surveyed drift anomalies, and traced forgotten quantum echoes, hoping to map a future from the ashes of our home. Our last route had been routine until we exited the Etern spiral and saw it, a star pulsing dimly at the edge of our vision. It shouldn't have been there, not by coordinates, not by sensors, not by astrophysical models, and yet we recognized it. Every one of us had dreamt of it. Captain Rourke was the first to speak it aloud. Stoic, unreadable, the kind of man whose every movement had weight. He stared out the viewport like someone confronting a ghost. "We've been here before," he said. Tessan, our space cartographer, flinched at his words. Her hands hovered over the star map interface, fingers trembling. "I drew this," she whispered, "a month ago, in my sleep." The map unfurled, a spiral system, 6 planetary bodies, each rotating in an erratic orbit around the star at its center. That star, black and luminous, contradicting itself. It emitted no measurable radiation, but bent space-time like a mass 20 times its size. Our scanners read it as both supernova remnant and main sequence emitter, alive and dead. Alien biologist Dr. Elira Kane muttered something in a language I didn't recognize. Not her native tongue, not human, just a noise of instinct. She wiped sweat from her brow. "It's not just light," she said. "It's memory." Even Sergeant Vex Harlan, our war-hardened Marine, had no jokes. He just stared and said, "I had a dream of this star when I was 10. My sister had the same one. She died 2 years later." The Driftglass glided closer, silent and deliberate, as if it were following a forgotten script. We activated evasive protocols, adjusted the thruster alignment, and even attempted a cold shut-off drift to escape its influence. But nothing seemed to work. It wasn't a force. It was an invitation. It felt like a call embedded in our instincts rather than dictated by physics. Our course shifted toward the star, not due to gravitational distortion, but through an uncanny consensus, as if the ship itself had chosen to comply. There was no torque, no strain, no artificial pull, just a motion wrapped in surrender. We had agreed to approach. Within hours, the impossible became routine. Clocks drifted, not slightly, but wildly, each one reporting a different moment in time. Our internal sense of time unraveled, no longer aligning with the rhythms of our breath or the beat of our hearts. Meals grew cold more quickly. Voices echoed longer. The light inside the ship didn't just flicker. It slowed. Photons seemed to crawl across surfaces, as if the vessel were trapped in a fluid of time rather than space. Shadows elongated, moving contrary to our footsteps, stretching and recoiling like tendrils reluctant to let go. It was as if reality itself, both inside and outside the Driftglass, had begun to sway, responding not to the laws of physics, but to our perception. Then the dreams returned, not as memories, but as projections. Tessin dreamt of walking down an endless hallway made of glass, with stars embedded in each panel, whispering as she passed. Elira envisioned oceans composed of thoughts, where liquid recollections swarmed like schools of fish. Vex dreamed of war, but the enemies wore his own face. Captain Rourke said nothing about his dream. He simply began writing equations in his sleep, pages and pages of them. When we ran the symbols through the ship's cognition net, it stalled and then shut down. The star had no name, so we gave it 1. Somnus 0. It accepted this name, or perhaps it already had it, and we were only remembering. We discovered an orbital mass that resembled a planet in scale, yet it behaved nothing like any celestial body we had ever studied. It wasn't held by gravity, at least not in any form we could model, but by something more elusive, intent. That was Elira's term, and oddly enough, it seemed to fit. The object hovered in an eternal rotation, not in elliptical motion, but in a closed loop of conceptual geometry. From orbit, it appeared to take the form of a Mobius strip interwoven with a torus, folding in on itself through dimensions we couldn't chart. Every model we attempted to run broke down due to recursive errors. Our instruments didn't just fail to read it, they refused to acknowledge its existence. It shouldn't have existed. And yet, it did. Impossibly real, unapologetically present, stable not through physics, but through will. We named it Velrune, and then we descended. The ground beneath us shifted between textures, stone that pulsed with warmth, glass that refracted not just light, but memory, and bone-like ridges that seemed to hum with ancient resonance. The terrain did not remain static. It morphed subtly under our gaze, as if adjusting to match whatever framework our minds tried to impose upon it. Towering above were structures that defied classical architecture, spires resembling frozen streams of thought, doorways shaped by emotion, and windows that opened onto scenes we'd never lived but somehow remembered. We were not alone in our trespass. The surface bore witness to others, prints of heavy boots, taloned impressions, and long-fingered handprints with too many joints. The echoes of alien journeys lingered in the dust, footsteps from species no longer present, or perhaps folded back into the memory of this place. Elira scanned the surroundings, her breath shallow. "This planet isn't just reacting to us," she said softly. "It's interpreting us, not through biology, through cognition. It thinks." We pressed deeper into the dream-forged landscape. The air was thick, not with mist or heat, but with resonance. Thoughts that we hadn't fully formed fluttered at the edge of hearing. They weren't voices, but intentions, unfinished ideas and sorrows we had buried. The atmosphere seemed to translate memory into echoes and regrets into ambient vibrations. Reality here was not a stable backdrop. It was an ongoing interpretation shaped by whoever stepped upon it. Rourke stood at the mouth of a cathedral grown from obsidian ribs. "I think this is why we left Earth," he said. "This place, this star, it's the origin of forgetting." We divided into operational pairs, each pursuing distinct objectives based on the surreal logic of the terrain. Tessin and I headed toward the eastern rise, where memory glass archways protruded like fossilized thoughts. We meticulously mapped the structures. Tessin sketched impossible geometries by instinct, while I captured coordinate anomalies that shifted mid-measurement. Vex and Elira gravitated toward a towering spire that radiated harmonic tremors. It wasn't just vibrating, it sang, emitting complex tones that resembled forgotten languages or half-formed intentions. Elira placed her hand on its surface and claimed she could feel it, listening. Rourke declined to accompany us. Silent and resolute, he ventured alone into the deepest part of the ruins. In the area where shadows pooled and the walls bent inward, he walked without hesitation, drawn not by mission, but by unspoken memories. Tessin froze mid-step, her pupils dilated and reflecting a shimmer that wasn't really there. "I'm still asleep," she murmured, her voice distant. I grabbed her shoulders and shook her gently, but there was no reaction. Then, in a soft, lilting tone that was unlike her own, she began to speak. My mother used to sing that song, before the collapse. I remember now. She hummed it when the lights went out. Her knees buckled, and she crumpled silently to the ground. Back aboard the Driftglass, Elira examined a shard we had recovered from the ruins. It was crystalline on the surface, but within it were layered filaments of coherent neural mapping and synaptic lattices. A consciousness fossilized in stone. The shard vibrated faintly and whispered in a language we couldn't decode, but Elira's expression changed. Tears welled up in her eyes, and a sob escaped her lips. It was joy, not fear. "We're not explorers here," she whispered. "We're echoes returning to the source. We're the children of something older than the stars." Rourke didn't return. We traced his path through the metamorphic maze of the ruins. Stone that glowed dimly when touched. Stairways that looped back onto themselves. And halls that whispered in languages we didn't know we understood. At the center, a monolith rose, blacker than a vacuum, a void sculpted into form. It wasn't constructed or placed. It was remembered, a relic held together by thought and reverence. He stood before it, his silhouette tiny against the infinite expanse. "It's not a star," he said. "It's the archive. Every species that dreamed of it left something behind. Earth was only one of many. This is where they all converge, those who looked up and dared to imagine." Then he stepped forward. He didn't vanish. He didn't disintegrate. He joined. His outline folded into the structure like a page in a book closing itself. He became a chapter, a layer, a memory woven into the eternal archive. Tessin walked next, her eyes wide with calm understanding. She didn't speak. She just followed the rhythm. Her body moved as if pulled by a lullaby only she could hear. Elira placed her hand on the monolith. It pulsed once. She whispered something, perhaps a name or a final hypothesis, and dissolved into its surface like light sinking into deep water. Only Vex and I were left. We returned to the Driftglass. We didn't run or scream. Instead, we documented every log, every scan, and every visual. We compiled the data, encrypted it, and uploaded the complete archive to the next passing syndicate relay buoy. Our message was clear. Don't orbit Somnus 0, and don't sleep near it. But if you do, if the dreams return, you'll understand why Earth reached for the stars in desperation, and why sometimes the stars reach back with remembrance